My sister-in-law falsely accused me of hurting my baby. Now my wife regrets believing her and begs me not to press charges. I'm a 34-year-old male and never thought I'd be sharing something this personal on Reddit. But after everything that's happened, I need to get this off my chest. Maybe writing it all down will help me process the nightmare I've been living through. Maybe someone out there has been through something similar and can offer advice. Or maybe I just need to tell someone who won't immediately take sides. Some background about me. I've been a wildlife photographer for the past decade. I started right after college, working for local nature magazines, before building up enough of a portfolio to land contracts with National Geographic and the Discovery Channel. It's not the most stable career. I'm often away on location for days or weeks at a time, trekking through forests or camping in national parks to get the perfect shot of an elusive species. But it's my passion, and I've built a good reputation in the industry. I met my wife, Jessica, a 32-year-old female, 6 years ago during a gallery showing of my work. She's a high school biology teacher with a love for the natural world that matched my own. She was there with her students on a field trip, and I noticed her immediately. Not just because she was beautiful, but because she was asking all these insightful questions about the ecosystems in my photographs. I asked her out for coffee after her students had moved on to another exhibit, and we clicked instantly. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden. It was perfect, just close friends and family, surrounded by nature. Jessica's sister Megan, a 36-year-old female, was her maid of honor. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs even then. During the wedding planning, Megan kept trying to change things, insisting her ideas were better than what Jessica and I had chosen. During her maid of honor speech, she talked more about herself than about Jessica, or our relationship. But I brushed it off. It was our wedding day, and I wasn't going to let anything spoil it. For the first few years, our marriage was everything I could have hoped for. Jessica and I balanced each other perfectly. When I was away on assignments, we'd video call every night. When I was home, we'd spend weekends hiking or visiting botanical gardens. We talked about having kids eventually, but we were enjoying our time together, building our careers and traveling when we could. 3 years into our marriage, Jessica's relationship with her sister started to become more complicated. Megan had gone through a messy divorce after her husband left her for a younger woman at his office. Around the same time, she found out she couldn't have children. A devastating 1-2 punch that sent her into a depression. Jessica, being the caring person she is, spent more and more time with Megan, trying to help her through it. I supported this completely. Family should be there for each other in tough times. But Megan's presence in our lives gradually increased to the point where it felt intrusive. She'd show up unannounced at our house, expecting Jessica to drop everything to comfort her. She'd call in the middle of the night in tears. She'd guilt Jessica if we had plans that didn't include her. When I gently suggested to Jessica that Megan might benefit from professional help, she got defensive. "She's seeing a therapist already," Jessica insisted, "but she needs her family too. You don't understand because you're an only child." That was true. I grew up without siblings, so the dynamics between sisters were somewhat foreign to me. But even so, something about Megan's behavior seemed excessive, even manipulative. Still, I tried to be understanding. After all, she was going through a genuinely difficult time. When Jessica and I decided to try for a baby, we were thrilled when she got pregnant almost immediately. Megan's reaction was mixed. She congratulated us with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, then immediately started talking about how difficult pregnancy would be, how much it would change our lives, how Jessica's body would never be the same. Not exactly the supportive response we'd hoped for. Throughout Jessica's pregnancy, Megan oscillated between being overly involved, buying mountains of baby supplies we didn't need, insisting on attending every doctor's appointment, and making passive-aggressive comments about how pregnancy was ruining Jessica's figure, or how we'd regret not traveling more before having kids. Jessica's pregnancy was relatively smooth until the last trimester, when she developed gestational hypertension that eventually led to preeclampsia. She was put on bed rest for the final 6 weeks, and I rearranged my work schedule to be home with her, canceling 2 international shoots that would have been significant for my career. I didn't mind. Jessica and our baby's health were my priority. Megan immediately appointed herself Jessica's primary caretaker, despite the fact that I was perfectly capable of looking after my wife. She'd show up every day, supposedly to help, but spent most of the time criticizing how I organized the nursery or prepared Jessica's meals. "You're lucky I'm here," she'd say within earshot of Jessica. "Most men are useless when it comes to this stuff." I bit my tongue for Jessica's sake. She was already stressed about the pregnancy complications, and I didn't want to add relationship drama to her worries. So, I tolerated Megan's presence and her constant undermining of my capabilities as a husband and soon-to-be father. Emma was born via emergency C-section at 37 weeks. It was the most terrifying and wonderful day of my life. There were complications during the delivery. Jessica hemorrhaged and needed additional surgery. For a few horrifying hours, I wasn't sure if she was going to make it, but she pulled through, though her recovery would be longer and more difficult than we'd anticipated. Emma was perfect, 6 pounds, 2 ounces, with Jessica's blue eyes and what looked like my dark hair. I fell in love with her instantly the first time I held her, this tiny bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket. I made a silent promise to always protect her, to be the kind of father she could count on, no matter what. Jessica's difficult recovery meant she needed help when we brought Emma home. My plan was to take extended leave from work. I had savings, and my regular clients were understanding about the situation. But Megan immediately inserted herself into the equation. "You need to get back to work," she told me firmly. "Your fancy photography career won't sustain itself. I'll move in temporarily to help Jessica with the baby." Before I could object, Jessica was nodding in agreement. "It makes sense, Nathan. You shouldn't put your career on hold indefinitely. Megan has experience with babies from her job, and she can be here full-time." I should mention that Megan works as a social worker specializing in child welfare cases. On paper, she was qualified to help with a newborn, but something about the arrangement made me uneasy. Still, Jessica seemed relieved at the solution, and I didn't want to cause her more stress during her recovery, so I reluctantly agreed. Though I scaled back my assignments to local jobs that wouldn't keep me away for more than a day or two at a time. Megan moved into our guest room temporarily. That was 4 months ago. I had just returned from a 3-day shoot at Yellowstone, documenting wolf behavior for a conservation magazine. It was my first multi-day assignment since Emma was born, and I'd been reluctant to take it. But Jessica had insisted. "We need the income," she'd said. "Megan's here to help. We'll be fine." I'd called every night, and while Jessica assured me everything was okay, something in her voice sounded off. She seemed distant, distracted. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Taking care of a newborn was grueling, even with help. When I walked through the door that Friday afternoon, the house was unusually quiet. No TV, no music, none of the baby sounds I'd grown accustomed to. I set down my equipment bag and camera case in the hallway, and moved quietly toward the living room. Jessica was asleep on the couch, which immediately struck me as odd. Even with her difficult recovery, she rarely napped during the day, too anxious about keeping a consistent schedule with Emma. My daughter was lying beside her on the couch, wide awake and squirming uncomfortably. I smiled at the sight of her. After 3 days away, she looked like she'd grown already. As I approached, I noticed the unmistakable smell that indicated Emma needed a diaper change. Not wanting to wake Jessica, who clearly needed the rest, I carefully lifted Emma from the couch. She recognized me immediately, her face lighting up with a toothless smile that melted my heart. "Hey, princess," I whispered, nestling her against my chest. "Let's get you changed, huh?" I carried her to the nursery, breathing in her baby scent mixed with the less pleasant diaper odor. I laid Emma down gently on the changing table, making funny faces at her while I gathered wipes, a fresh diaper, and clean clothes. She was watching me intently, kicking her legs in the air. I had just unfastened her soiled diaper when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Assuming it was Jessica, I turned with a smile, ready to greet my wife, but it was Megan standing in the doorway. And the expression on her face stopped me cold. Her eyes were blazing with an intensity I'd never seen before, her mouth twisted into a snarl. For a moment she just stared at me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. I blinked in confusion. "Changing Emma's diaper." "What does it look like I'm doing?" She took a step into the room, her entire body tensed like a predator about to pounce. "Get away from her right now." "Megan, what are you talking about? She needs a change." I didn't get to finish my sentence because suddenly Megan was charging at me, her face contorted with rage. Before I could react, She was hitting me, clawing at my face, trying to pull me away from the changing table. Instinctively, I leaned over Emma to shield her from Megan's attack, using my body as a barrier while trying to fend off the blows with one arm. "Get away from her, you disgusting pervert!" Megan was screaming now, her voice echoing through the nursery. "I saw what you were doing." I was completely stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening. "What the hell are you talking about? I'm changing her diaper." The commotion woke Jessica, who came rushing into the nursery, her eyes wide with alarm. She took in the scene, me leaning over Emma, Megan trying to pull me away, and froze. Megan immediately turned to her, tears streaming down her face. "I caught him, Jess. I caught him touching Emma inappropriately. I saw it with my own eyes." My heart stopped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't happening, it couldn't be. "That's insane," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of shock and anger. "I was changing her diaper, Jessica. You know I would never." "He's lying," Megan cut in, her voice suddenly calm and certain. "I saw him, Jess. I wouldn't make this up." Jessica looked from Megan to me, her face draining of color. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the desperate desire not to believe what her sister was saying. But then she looked at Megan, the person who had been by her side through her recovery, who'd been helping with Emma when I was away for work, and something changed in her expression. "Get out," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Get out of this house right now." "Jessica, please," I begged, my mind racing to understand how this could be happening. "You know me. You know I would never hurt Emma." "Megan is lying. Stop it," Jessica cried, moving forward to take Emma from the changing table. She cradled our daughter protectively, backing away from me. "Just stop. I can't. I need you to leave." Megan stood beside Jessica, a supportive arm around her shoulders, but her eyes on me were triumphant. In that moment, I saw the truth. Whatever was happening, Megan had orchestrated it deliberately. "Why are you doing this?" I asked her directly, ignoring Jessica for the moment. "Why would you make up something so vile?" "I'm not making anything up," Megan replied coldly. "I know what I saw." "And Jessica," she continued, turning to her sister, "you need to call the police." "The police?" I repeated incredulously. "This is insane, Jessica. Please. Just think about this. Why would I ever—" But Jessica wasn't listening to me anymore. She had pulled out her phone and handed it to Megan, who dialed 911 with a steadiness that chilled me. As I stood there, helpless and horrified, I heard Megan calmly report that she had witnessed child abuse, giving our address and my description. The next 20 minutes were a blur of desperate attempts to make Jessica listen to reason. But with Megan constantly interrupting, whispering in Jessica's ear, steering the narrative, my words seemed to bounce off an invisible wall. Jessica wouldn't look me in the eye, holding Emma close and keeping her distance from me as if I might snatch our daughter away. When the police arrived, Megan greeted them at the door like she'd been expecting them, in a clear, composed voice that contrasted sharply with her hysterical attack on me earlier. She told them she had witnessed me inappropriately touching my daughter during a diaper change. She described specific actions with a clinical detachment that made me physically ill. None of it had happened, none of it was true, but she spoke with such conviction, such apparent sincerity, that the officers looked at me with barely disguised disgust as they handcuffed me. Jessica stood in the corner of the living room, tears streaming down her face, unable to watch. My last glimpse of my daughter was her tiny face peeking over Jessica's shoulder as I was led out the door of my own home in handcuffs. They put me in a holding cell by myself, which was probably for the best. I'd heard enough stories about what happens to people accused of crimes against children in jail. As I sat on the hard bench, my mind kept replaying the events, trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. Why would Megan do this? Why would she fabricate such a horrific accusation? And Jessica, how could she believe it even for a second? We'd been together for 6 years, she knew me better than anyone. How could she think I was capable of hurting our daughter? I barely slept that night, my thoughts cycling between confusion, anger, and a gut-wrenching fear that I might never see my daughter again. By morning I felt hollowed out, numb from the shock of how quickly my life had imploded. A public defender came to see me, a harried-looking woman with too many files under her arm. She told me the preliminary charges, and asked for my side of the story. When I explained what had really happened, that I was simply changing my daughter's diaper when my sister-in-law attacked me and made false accusations, she looked skeptical, Is there anyone who can corroborate your version of events? She asked. That's when I remembered the cameras. 6 months ago, after a series of break-ins in our neighborhood, I had installed a comprehensive security system throughout our house, including motion-activated cameras in every room except the bathrooms. One of those cameras was mounted on the wall of the nursery, positioned to capture the entire room. There's a security camera in the nursery, I told her, suddenly hopeful. It would have recorded everything. The public defender looked surprised but made a note. I'll have someone check if there's footage. It could be crucial evidence, she said. She left, promising to return once she had more information. I sat back on the bench, a small spark of hope flickering in the darkness. The camera would vindicate me. It had to. Hours passed with excruciating slowness. I was given a tasteless meal that I barely touched, too nauseated with anxiety to eat. Finally, the door to the holding area opened, and the public defender reappeared, this time with a police detective. We've reviewed the security footage from your home, the detective said without preamble. Based on what we've seen, we're dropping all charges against you. Relief flooded through me so intensely that I had to sit down again. The camera caught everything? The detective nodded grimly. Everything. It clearly shows you changing your daughter's diaper, nothing more. Then it shows your sister-in-law entering the room and physically assaulting you while you tried to protect the baby. There was absolutely no inappropriate contact. What about Megan's statement? The detailed description she gave? Fabricated, the detective said flatly. We'll be investigating her for filing a false report, among other potential charges. The procedural details of my release passed in a blur. All I could think about was getting home, seeing Emma, making Jessica understand what had really happened. But as I collected my personal belongings and signed the release forms, a cold realization settled over me. Jessica had believed Megan without question. She had looked at me, her husband of 5 years, the father of her child, and seen a monster. How do you come back from that? When the taxi dropped me off at our house, I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, steeling myself for whatever came next. I used my key to unlock the front door, half expecting Jessica to have changed the locks already. The house was quiet when I entered, but I could hear movement in the kitchen. Taking a deep breath, I walked through the living room and found Megan sitting at our kitchen table, casually scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. She looked up when I entered, her eyes widening slightly in surprise before narrowing with contempt. You should have stayed in jail, she said coolly. I know what I saw. Rage surged through me, hot and consuming. After everything she'd done, she was still sitting in my house, still maintaining her lie. I had to clench my fists to keep from shouting. The camera saw everything, Megan, I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. Why are you doing this? A flicker of something, panic perhaps, crossed her face before she composed herself. What cameras? The security cameras I installed after the Richardsons' house was broken into. There's one in the nursery. It recorded everything yesterday. Me changing Emma's diaper, you attacking me, you making up those disgusting accusations. Everything. Megan's face paled, but she recovered quickly. She stood up, grabbing her purse from the counter. You're lying. There are no cameras. The police have the footage. That's why I'm here and not still in a cell. They've dropped all charges, and they're investigating you for filing a false report. For a moment, Megan looked genuinely frightened. Then her expression hardened into something ugly and defiant. Jessica will never believe you over me. Never. I've made sure of that. Then she pushed past me and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood in the kitchen, trembling with the aftermath of the confrontation, wondering what she meant by that last statement. What had she been telling Jessica all this time? I called Jessica's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried her parents' house next, assuming that's where she would have taken Emma. Her father answered, his voice instantly hostile. She doesn't want to talk to you, he said before I could even ask for her. Leave her alone. Mr. Collins, please, I begged. The police dropped all charges. There were security cameras in the nursery. They caught everything on video. Megan lied about what happened. There was a long pause. What cameras? I installed them after the break-ins in our neighborhood. One of them is in the nursery. It recorded everything. Me changing Emma's diaper, Megan attacking me, everything. The police have the footage. Another pause, longer this time. I'll tell Jessica you called, he said finally, his tone slightly less hostile. Then he hung up. I spent the rest of the day in a strange limbo, moving through the house that no longer felt like home. I noticed signs of Megan's presence everywhere. Her jacket hung on the coat rack, her brand of coffee in the cupboard, her laptop on the side table in the living room. It made my skin crawl to think of her infiltrating our lives so completely. Late that night, as I sat in the dark living room, unable to sleep in the bed I'd shared with Jessica, my phone rang. It was Jessica. "Is it true?" she asked without preamble, her voice hoarse from crying. "About the cameras?" "Yes," I said simply. "The police have the footage. It shows exactly what happened. Me changing Emma's diaper, nothing more. Then Megan came in and attacked me." Jessica was quiet for so long that I thought the call had dropped. "Why would she do that?" she finally whispered. "I don't know," I admitted, "but she did." "And you believed her, Jessica. You believed I could hurt our daughter." "I was confused," she said weakly. "She's my sister. She said she saw, and she works with abused children. She knows the signs." "I'm your husband," I countered, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "You've known me for 6 years. How could you think even for a second that I would hurt Emma?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "I don't know what I was thinking. Everything's been so hard since the birth. And Megan's been telling me things." "What things?" "That you seemed distant with Emma. That you were too rough when you held her. That you seemed relieved to go on your photography trips to get away from us." Little things at first, but they added up, and I was exhausted, in pain from the surgery, overwhelmed with a new baby. I wasn't thinking clearly. I closed my eyes, pieces falling into place. "She's been manipulating you, Nathan. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have known. Where are you?" I interrupted. "At my parents' with Emma." "Is Megan there?" "No. She left a few hours ago. Said she needed to get something from our house." That explained her presence in our kitchen earlier. "Jessica, I think you should stay there for now," I said carefully. "We need to figure this out, but I don't think we should do it with Emma in the middle." Are you saying you don't want us to come home?" Her voice broke on the word home. "I'm saying I need time to process all of this. You believed I could hurt our daughter, Jessica. You let the police take me away. That's not something I can just get over overnight." She was crying again, soft broken sobs that once would have compelled me to comfort her. But now I felt a wall between us, built of suspicion and betrayal. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said gently. "Give Emma a kiss for me." After hanging up, I sat in the darkness for a long time, wondering how we had come to this point and where we could possibly go from here. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, custody hearings, and sleepless nights. Jessica filed for divorce 3 days after my arrest, citing concerns for Emma's safety, despite the police dropping all charges, despite the video evidence. Her lawyer argued that, even though the specific incident had been disproven, there were ongoing concerns about my suitability as a parent. I knew Megan was behind this. She had poisoned Jessica against me so thoroughly that even clear evidence of my innocence wasn't enough to undo the damage. But I wasn't going to give up without a fight. I hired the best family law attorney I could afford, liquidating one of my retirement accounts to cover the retainer. "This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen," my lawyer, Diana Chen, told me after reviewing the security footage. "Your sister-in-law fabricated serious allegations against you, physically assaulted you, and appears to have been manipulating your wife for months. We're going to use every bit of this." Diana was a force of nature in the courtroom, sharp, meticulous, and utterly unintimidated by the tactics of Jessica's lawyer. During the initial custody hearing, she presented not only the security footage from the day of the incident, but also earlier clips that showed Megan's increasingly controlling behavior in our home. "Notice how Miss Collins positions herself between Mr. Reeves and his daughter whenever he attempts to care for her," Diana pointed out, as we watched footage from the week before the incident. "Notice how she physically moves his hand away when he tries to feed his daughter. This is a pattern of interference that culminated in her false allegations." But the most revealing moment came during Megan's testimony. Under Diana's skilled questioning, Megan's story began to unravel. First, she claimed she'd seen me touching Emma inappropriately during the diaper change. When pressed on what exactly she had witnessed, she changed her statement, saying she'd only seen me looking at her in a way that made me uncomfortable. When Diana asked her to explain the discrepancy between her initial report to the police and her current testimony, Megan became defensive. "I know what I saw," she insisted, her voice rising. "I work with abused children. I know the signs." Miss Collins, Diana said calmly. The security footage clearly shows Mr. Reeves changing his daughter's diaper in a completely appropriate manner. It shows you entering the room and immediately attacking him without provocation. Can you explain that? The camera angle must not have caught everything, Megan said, her eyes darting around the courtroom. Or maybe he edited the footage. The footage was retrieved directly by the police from the security system's cloud storage, Diana pointed out. It couldn't have been tampered with. Megan's face flushed with anger. He fooled everyone with his perfect husband act for years. I was the only one who saw through it. I was trying to protect my niece. By fabricating allegations that could have sent an innocent man to prison? Diana asked. By physically attacking him while he was caring for an infant? You don't understand, Megan shouted, losing the composure she'd maintained throughout the hearing. Jessica is my sister. That baby should have been mine. I would have been a better mother than she is, and a better wife to Nathan than she could ever be. The courtroom fell silent. Even Megan seemed shocked by what she had just revealed. Jessica, sitting on the other side of the courtroom, stared at her sister with a stunned expression. The judge cleared his throat. I think we'll take a short recess, he said, his eyes lingering on Megan with clear disapproval. During the break, Jessica approached me for the first time since the incident. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her skin pale, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Did you hear what she said? Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. She's been planning this, Jessica. She wanted to take my place in your life, in Emma's life. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I should have seen it. All those little comments, the way she tried to take over everything with Emma. I thought she was just being helpful because of my recovery, but she was trying to replace me. Before I could respond, the bailiff called us back into the courtroom. The judge's decision was swift and decisive. He granted me temporary full custody of Emma, with Jessica allowed supervised visitation until a final determination could be made. He also issued a restraining order against Megan, barring her from coming near me, Emma, or our home. As we left the courtroom, I caught a glimpse of Megan's face. The look she gave me was pure hatred, a promise that this wasn't over. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe again. I had my daughter back. Now I just had to figure out what came next. 3 months after the custody hearing, I received a call from Jessica's mother, Martha. She and I had always had a good relationship, unlike her husband, who followed Megan's lead in treating me with suspicion from the start. Nathan, Martha said, her voice tight with emotion, you need to come over. There's something you should hear. When I arrived at their house, Martha led me to the kitchen, where Jessica was sitting, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked up when I entered but quickly looked away, as if unable to meet my gaze. Tell him, Martha said gently, placing a hand on Jessica's shoulder. Jessica took a shaky breath. Megan admitted she lied, she whispered, staring down at the table. She didn't see anything that day. She made it all up. I sat down, suddenly needing the support of the chair. Why would she do that? She's always been jealous of me, Jessica said, finally looking up. Of my marriage, my baby. She's been struggling with her own divorce and infertility issues. She saw an opportunity to drive a wedge between us, and she took it. But why did you believe her? I asked, the question that had been haunting me for months. Why didn't you trust me? Jessica's eyes filled with tears again. She'd been telling me things for weeks, small things at first, how you seemed disinterested in Emma, how you were probably relieved to go on your photography trips to get away from us. Then she started suggesting that you might be inappropriate with Emma. She said she'd seen signs. Signs? I echoed incredulously. She's a social worker, Nathan, Jessica said, as if that explained everything. She deals with abuse cases. I trusted her professional judgment, and I was exhausted, in pain from my recovery, overwhelmed with a new baby. I wasn't thinking clearly. Martha cut in. The truth is, she manipulated Jessica when she was at her most vulnerable, and Jessica let herself be manipulated because Megan was doing so much to help with Emma. Where is she now? I asked. Gone, Martha said firmly. We told her to leave and not come back after she admitted the truth. The full story emerged gradually over the next hour. Megan had been harboring resentment toward Jessica for years, jealous of her relatively easy path through life, while Megan struggled with relationships, then infertility. Then her divorce. When Jessica had Emma, that resentment crystallized into a toxic obsession. Megan had moved in with the deliberate intention of driving a wedge between Jessica and me. She'd been systematically undermining Jessica's confidence in me as a father, planting seeds of doubt, suggesting that my frequent work trips were a sign I didn't want to be involved in Emma's life. She'd been positioning herself as the more capable caretaker, the one who truly understood Jessica's and Emma's needs. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Jessica showed me what she'd found while cleaning the guest room after Megan left, a journal, in which Megan had detailed her plan to save Jessica and Emma from me, gradually turning Jessica against me, and ultimately taking my place in their lives. She wrote about how she'd be a better mother to Emma than either of us, Jessica said, her voice hollow with disbelief, how she'd raise her as her own once I saw the truth about you. The journal also revealed that Megan had been deliberately interfering with Jessica's recovery, secretly adjusting her medication dosage to keep her slightly foggy and more susceptible to suggestion. She'd been isolating Jessica from friends who might have provided a reality check, screening her calls and convincing her she was too tired for visitors. I can't believe I didn't see what she was doing, Jessica said, burying her face in her hands. I feel like such a fool. She's manipulative, I said softly, and you were vulnerable. A difficult birth, pain medication, sleep deprivation. It's no wonder you were susceptible. The truth was finally out, but that didn't erase the damage that had been done. Jessica had doubted me at the most fundamental level, had believed I could harm our child. The trust that forms the foundation of any marriage had been shattered. Could we rebuild it? Did I even want to try? As I drove home that evening, Emma asleep in her car seat, I had more questions than answers. But one thing was clear, Megan's toxic presence in our lives was at an end. Now we had to pick up the pieces and decide what came next. A week after my conversation with Jessica and Martha, I received a call from an unknown number. Curious, I answered. Nathan. The voice on the other end was unmistakable, though it lacked the confidence I was accustomed to hearing. It's Megan. My first instinct was to hang up, but something made me stay on the line. What do you want? Please, you have to help me, she said, her voice breaking. Someone sent the security video to the Department of Children and Family Services. They're investigating me at work. I could lose my license, my job, everything. I sat down slowly, a strange calmness settling over me. And why would I help you? Look, I know I made a mistake. A mistake? I cut her off, my voice dangerously quiet. You accused me of sexually assaulting my daughter. You tried to have me imprisoned. You manipulated my wife during her recovery from major surgery. You plotted to take my place in my family. That's not a mistake, Megan. That's a calculated campaign of destruction. I wasn't thinking clearly, she pleaded. After my divorce, the infertility diagnosis, I was in a bad place mentally. I need you to tell them that, to explain that I wasn't myself. The video speaks for itself, I said flatly. It shows exactly who you are. Nathan, please, she sobbed. I'll do anything. I'll write a formal confession. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll apologize publicly. Just please don't let them destroy my career. It's all I have left. The desperation in her voice was almost satisfying after everything she'd put me through. Who sent the video? I asked, though I had my suspicions. There was a pause. Jessica, she admitted reluctantly. She sent it to my supervisor with a detailed account of everything I did. That surprised me. Jessica hadn't mentioned taking any action against her sister. Jessica did that? Yes, Megan said, a hint of her old bitterness creeping back into her voice. My own sister. After everything I did for her. Everything you did to her, you mean, I corrected. You took advantage of her when she was at her most vulnerable. You tried to steal her child and her husband. I would have been better for both of you. Megan suddenly exploded, the facade of remorse cracking. Jessica was always the golden child, always got everything handed to her, a perfect husband, a beautiful baby. It should have been me. I deserved that life more than she did. The raw envy in her voice chilled me. This wasn't just someone who had made poor choices in a moment of weakness. This was someone consumed by jealousy to the point of delusion. Goodbye, Megan, I said quietly. Wait, Nathan, don't hang up, please. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I'm just stressed about the investigation. Please, I need your help. They're talking about criminal charges for filing a false report. I could go to jail. Like you were willing to let me go to jail? I asked, the memory of that night in the cell still vivid. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? I hung up without waiting for her response. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. There was a strange sense of closure in hearing her desperation, in knowing that she was facing consequences for her actions. Later that day, Jessica called to tell me she'd received a similar desperate call from Megan. She wanted me to retract my statement to her supervisor, Jessica said, to say I sent the video in the heat of anger, but that I didn't really believe she'd done anything wrong. What did you say? I told her I couldn't lie for her, that she needs to face the consequences of what she did. Jessica's voice was steady, resolute in a way I hadn't heard since before Emma was born. She tried to destroy our family, Nathan. She tried to take Emma away from you. I can't forgive that. A week later, I learned through mutual connections that Megan had been suspended from her job, pending a full investigation. The state licensing board was reviewing her past cases for signs of similar misconduct, and the district attorney was considering filing criminal charges for filing a false police report. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with Megan. Update: 6 months later. It's been a long road, but I wanted to update everyone who offered advice and support during the darkest period of my life. Your comments gave me perspective when I needed it most, and for that, I'm forever grateful. After much deliberation and several sessions with a family therapist, Jessica and I decided to attempt reconciliation, but on my terms. We've been in intensive couples therapy for the past 5 months, working through the trauma of what happened and trying to rebuild the foundation of our relationship. It hasn't been easy. There have been sessions where old wounds reopened, where we both left feeling raw and uncertain, but there have also been breakthroughs, moments of genuine understanding and forgiveness that I couldn't have imagined in those early days after the accusation. Jessica returned to teaching part-time, which has been good for her sense of identity beyond being Emma's mother. As for me, I've been focusing on my photography career and recently landed a contract for a book of wildlife images that will keep me close to home for the next year. Jessica moved back into our home 3 months ago, though we're still sleeping in separate rooms. We're taking things slowly, rebuilding trust day by day. Some nights we sit on the porch swing after Emma is asleep, talking about our day, or sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. It's not the easy intimacy we once had, but it's something new and perhaps, eventually, something stronger. As for Megan, karma hit her hard. She lost her job and her social work license. The investigation into her conduct revealed that this wasn't the first time she'd made questionable accusations in her professional capacity. Several of her past cases are now under review, potentially affecting the lives of many families who were separated based on her assessments. She's facing criminal charges for filing a false report, and potentially civil damages from me. My lawyer is handling that. Her reputation in the professional community is destroyed, and most of her former colleagues want nothing to do with her. The most satisfying moment came last month when Jessica and I were at the courthouse for a hearing related to Megan's case. Megan saw us walking in together, Jessica's hand in mine, and she completely broke down in the hallway. "Please don't testify against me," she begged, looking nothing like the confident woman who had once tried to destroy my life. "I'll lose everything." "You were willing to let me lose everything," I reminded her calmly. "My daughter, my marriage, my reputation, my freedom." Jessica stepped forward then, putting herself between me and her sister. "You did this to yourself, Megan. You tried to destroy my family because you couldn't stand to see me happy. I will never forgive you for that." Seeing Jessica stand up to Megan like that, choosing me, choosing our family, was a turning point for me. It doesn't erase what happened, but it showed me that the woman I married, the one I had trusted implicitly for years before this nightmare, was still there. Thank you, Reddit, for standing by me through this journey. Your support helped me keep going when giving up seemed like the easier path.